In hopes of returning to the good old days, I'd like to share a very special story with you. Long history of online roleplay. Gotten to a point where I've realised in the half-assed chat room RP I've been doing is fucking dreadful. Hungry for an upgrade. But like the real life friend base required to get into tabletop RPGs. Join a small RP forum, hidden on the 56 or so page of Google. Literally about 20 people on the entire site, but it looks alright. Everyone seems to be pretty experienced, literate, not polluted with Mary Sue's. Despite not being tied to any specific tabletop system, they made a vague system to implement stats and roles. Basically, if you had a bare bones character sheet with 6 primary stats, some skills and a unique character ability. They have about 5 separate settings, ranging from fantasy to sci-fi. Every single one has been played by the same group of people, albeit with different characters. Each setting has its own subforum, with a thread for every arc. Browse through them all, but the sci-fi one catches my eye. Nothing stands out about it, typical gritty sci-fi, but it took my fancy anyway. Check out the most recent created thread. Wanted, Captain Drake. First post was written by the board admin himself. Started like an online job posting for mercs, with details on the objective, location and payment. Pretty simple concept. There's a bounty on some big bad space pirate guy. For being one thread among half a dozen or so, it was strangely popular. Almost everyone is playing this one. Didn't take long to find out why. Reason 1. Every single fucking character on the site was a mercenary. Reason 2. The bounty was a fuck huge, and it seemed like something you could actually spend money on equipment on this forum. Give the whole thread a quick read. Forum admin was acting as the GM equivalent, setting up plot threads, describing settings, and posting as NPCs. The party was a group of 10 or so unaffiliated mercenaries. So far, the raider did a side quest for some bartender for some information on Drake's safe house. Found one of his pirate lackeys when they finally got there and raided the place. Interrogated the lackey to get Drake's actual location. Learned that he's planning to leave the planet by tomorrow night. And finally, boarded his ship, killed most of his crew, and fought the way to the door of Captain's cabin. The most recent post was of the party leader, a guy named Archer, having just blown the door open. No response from the admin/GM, figured they must have left before that post came through. Taking a look at the post dates, I realised this was a common problem. Players would have to wait days at a time for the game to continue if the GM ever disappeared for a while. Well, fuck that. After reading all this shit, I'm starting to get pretty hyped up. I want to play, but I'd have to wait for someone to start a new arc, since this one is basically about to end. I'm too impatient. It has to happen now. I create a username. I create an account. Username, Captain Drake. At this point, I noticed that the guy playing Archer, as well as a few others, are still online. Probably waiting to see if the admin comes back. Hasn't been that long since his last post. Gotta act fast. I don't know exactly why, but I decided to act like the GM. I guess as it was too late for any new players to join in, the only option left was to join as the GM. After studying the admin style of posting and narration, I write up my first post. Describe the interior of the captain's cabin. Describe the man sitting in the captain's chair. Describe him swiveling around to face the party.
Hey there, fellas.
At this point, I realise there's a high chance I'm going to get ignored completely. Lose the will to expand the post any further. It's of passable length anyway. Post. Wait. 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 Getting increasingly anxious as I refresh the page, checking to see if anyone who's looking at the thread. Did I just spill my spaghetti? Finally, someone responds. It's Archer. He's posting in brackets. That means out of character, not in character.
Welcome to the forum, but you can't just join in like that. Lol.
What the fuck was I thinking? Ah well. I start posting up an out of character response, trying to pass it off as a newbie mistake. Post all written up. Decide to refresh the page on another tab before I post. Someone else might have replied in the meantime, after all. Oh shit! They did! It's not in brackets. One of the less edgy mercenaries described stepping into the cabin, whistling at how fancy it was. Typical scoundrel type. Mentioned how he was wearing a baseball cap in every other post. Nice ship you got here. Shame it was going to waste on a punk like you. Seriously, who wears a cape indoors? Yeah, I described my guys wearing a cape. Fuck you. I basically just ripped off the appearance of a character and the pic related. After I'm done reading, I refresh again. Another post. One of the more serious characters this time. Beefy guy with a Barrett-style arm gun thing going on.
Who has a cape at all? It's like the 45th century.
Oh shit, nigga. Below him is Archer again, basically asking why people are going along with this. I consider sticking around to hear the response, but fuck that. They were going along with it. I didn't want to keep them waiting. I type up my response.
Well damn, you're pretty judgmental for a bunch of mercenaries, aren't you? Mocking a man's cape. Ought to be ashamed of yourselves.
I should mention, these are approximations of what was actually said. I can't remember the exact wordings.
Nice of you to let me do flap my gums before you shoot me dead though. Appreciate it.
I described leaning back into my seat, unarmed but smiling, and focusing intently on the two players that were playing along. I figured the others might get jealous of the interaction and join in too.
How much are they paying you anyway?
This time the responses are rapid fire. Everyone currently in line, minus Archer, is rolling with it. I focus on one response in particular, since there's a lot of overlap in what they're saying and doing. Pale girl with big chunky cybernetic arms catches my attention, because pale girl with big chunky cybernetic arms mainly. She mentions the bounty, 150,000 credits. I respond quickly, no more hammering on F5.
Let's see, 150k split, what, 8 ways? I'm feeling a little too pressured to do the math, what with all these guns pointing at me, but I think you'll agree that's a mighty small sum.
Sow the seeds of discontent, Drake. Sow them hard. At this point, Archer responds. Quickly too. I imagine he didn't want to risk anyone taking the hint and getting any ideas. He basically presses the barrel of his gun to Drake's head, telling him to shut up. Little surprised he didn't just shoot, but I'm not gonna complain. One more response comes in before I start typing. The return of baseball cap. Otherwise known as Scurrit. Already liking this guy on account of naming his character something like Scurrit. He puts a hand on Archer's shoulder, suggesting they hear me out, in case I have a better offer. I would fucking hope so, or this is gonna be the most pointless thread hijack ever. Time to see how far I can take this.
Smart man, you gotta wonder, with such a generous bounty on my head, why didn't my crew turn coat and cash it in weeks ago? I'll tell you why. There was a bigger payday in their sights. Only now I find myself without a crew, whole lot of vacancies for some aspiring mercs like yourselves. What do you say, kids? How do you feel about making 10 times what you came here for?
I'm getting pretty hype at this point. I don't know which direction I want to take this in, but I need them to fall for the sales pitch. Wait a little while, then refresh. Archer responded almost fucking immediately.
Save your breath, scum.
Then he pulls the trigger. Describe my brain sputting against the cabin's back wall. He already had his gun pressed against my temple. By their rules, there's no way I could react. Fuck! Completely demoralized, not sure what to do, what I could even respond with. Refresh again. By their rules, there's no way I could react. But Archer assumed there was an uncontested action. Turns out, it wasn't. Which means it was time to break out the dice. Lo and fucking behold, Robo Arm Girl responds to the post describing her, trying to yank Archer's wrist upwards before he fired. Accompanying her post is a small out-of-character blurb. Competed agility? Along with a forum-generated random number at the bottom. 17 on a 12-sided die. I hadn't had the chance to figure out how all this roll shit worked on the forum yet. But Archer responded not long after. No roleplay, just a number. 14. With no clue what's happening, I continue to beat my F5 key until Robo Arm Girl posts again. It's a description of her wrenching away his arm just in time, with a bullet lodging itself in the ship's hull. I later found out, as a replacement GM, I should have done a whole integrity roll as a response to that, but hey, learning experience. No time to waste here, I fingerfuck my keyboard as soon as I'm done reading. Getting up off my chair, getting up and close and personal with Archer.
Much obliged, doll. Your brave leader's becoming a problem, ain't he? I can see he's a man without ambition. Dead end this one.
I describe a shit-eating grin, then move on to Drake returning to his seat, swiveling back around and using a remote to activate what is essentially a giant plasma TV built into the walls of the cabin. Long story short, I pull a completely different arc out of my ass. Drake explains the details out loud, with visual aids showing up on the space TV to drive points home. Ripped the idea off a Firefly comic I read years ago. Details have gotten a bit foggy with time, but as far as I remember, it has something to do with the vast reserve of ancient Earth relics housed on a derelict space station in an abandoned sector of space. Post fucking takes fucking ages to write up, since I'm pausing every 5 minutes to make up more bullshit out of nowhere. But when I'm finally about to finish it and post it, things really start to get interesting. Things go almost exactly as I hoped after that. As I said before, money can actually be spent on things under this system's rules. which means the arbitrary 800k haul I pulled out of thin air has been taken dead seriously by these guys. They're sold. One by one, the players expressed their interest in my proposal. Except for one. After some more negotiation, I described turning back to Archer.
Since we're all on the same page here, what do you say to a gesture of good faith? Let's throw the stick in the mud out the airlock.
I am grinning like a fucking madman in real life at this point. In a very short amount of time, I develop a raging hate boner for Archer. But his response makes me realize something.
Now hold on one goddamn minute. Do you have any idea why I ended up leading this merry band of assholes? Easy answer. I'm the best shot. And, for the record, I like my credits as much as the next guy. Now you've come up with a better offer. I'm willing to play ball. If you're sensible, you'll take me along for the ride.
The guy who's playing Archer is kind of a bro, man. I hated him at first, but I realized at this point the guy was just playing his character, who I came to learn was an impatient motherfucker. At this point, I take stock of what just happened. I just came out of nowhere, hijacked a thread while the admin was at work or sleeping or getting railed or whatever the fuck. Established myself as a dick-ass space pirate with a ship and a crew, however dead they may be now. Effectively recruited a new crew. I came up with a new mission for us to tackle together. The thread effectively ends there. People starting to post out of character, and majority saying that they need to get offline and sleep. Before he leaves, Screw-It tells me that he had fun, but will come with a pretty blatant warning.
But man, you're gonna get banned so fucking hard tomorrow.
Shit, that's right. No matter how stressful it may have been, I'm still gonna have an angry admin to deal with. My sci-fi misadventures may end before they ever begin. Being pretty tired myself, I follow their lead, and try to get some more sleep, but it's tough. The concoction of satisfaction and dread keeps me awake for hours. After work the next day, I looked on and almost immediately hoping my account wouldn't be banned outright. The admin was online. I had 3 unread PMs, but my name was still there. Captain Drake, motherfucker. Terrified, I opened my inbox and checked my PMs. 1 from Archer. Subject, good luck. 2 from the Hawk, the forum admin himself. No subject written for either. I shit my pants accordingly. The first PM was long, and I mean really fucking long. The highlights. First of all, I don't appreciate you taking advantage of the situation while I was absent. However, the forum operates on a 3 strikes policy. You took the role of the storyteller without authorization, which means I consider that your first strike. They call GM storytellers for some reason. Never figured out why, since they were clearly familiar with the tabletop terminology. You also entered the RP thread without first applying for a character validation, which I consider to be your second strike. I realized after taking a less rushed look around the forums that you weren't supposed to jump in, even as a player. There was a subforum where people would just post character sheets and histories. Then they wait for the admin, or one of the other few important people to authorize the character. Good way to weed out shitty overpowered characters. But it always pissed me off, seeing they had so much power over the character creation. I've yet to receive any complaints. However, if anyone comes to me with any issues regarding your behavior, it would be a third strike, and I'll ban you immediately. I suggest you follow these rules from now on, as you plan on continuing the roleplay here. Hawk. My first thought was that Hawk was a pretentious cunt. There was this level of formality in his PM that should be reserved for meetings between fucking world powers, not forum admins. But the 3 strikes thing struck me as fair, and somehow, I liked the idea of having only 1 strike left. Living on the edge, I guess? Open the second PM as an afterthought. Just 1 line. Oh, and welcome to the forum. Archer's PM was civil enough, telling me that he enjoyed the session, and that he put in a good word for me with Hawk. No idea if that had any effect on whether I got banned or not, but felt pretty good either way. A couple of days passed with jack shit happening. Only activity was the off-topic boards on which I never bothered checking out. But one day, a new thread gets posted in the sci-fi section. Under a black flag. Oh shit. It's another setup thread by Hawk. There's a brief synopsis of the past arc's events, mentioning that the mercenaries found themselves forging an unlikely alliance, as well as a description of the new objective. Sure enough, it was the exact arspool quest I proposed before, only fleshed out and modified slightly. Now, I might have hijacked the GM position to begin with, but I came to the forum with the intent of playing. You know, as a player. So, I was happy to let Hawk take the session again, and begrudgingly wrote up my character application as the one and only Captain Drake. At the time, I thought me and Hawk were square. But things between us didn't end there. From there, I more or less became part of the family. The mission was pretty typical in retrospect. It seemed like Hawk was trying to get things back under control. The plot was simple, so more than anything, it was a way for us to develop the party dynamic. Although Captain was literally my username, only a few of the players actually treated me like I was their leader. Robogirl, who I forgot to introduce by name, her name was Faye, was really stoic and standoffish, but every now and then she'd follow up with a yes and a sir. Her combat style was pretty direct, in that she'd run up and punch people to death with her cyber arms. Skurrit was eager to act like I was his boss. I think he realised that his character was a Weasley underling positioned perfectly. He used an SMG, but prioritised social stats over other combat stats, so he wasn't that useful. Archer would fucking die before he called me sir, but I kinda liked it that way. I was surprised to learn that he was a sniper, maxed out the shit out of his aiming stat, so he could headshot virtually anything, anywhere. Besides those three, there were the two others willing to go along with this bizarre turn of events. One was Ronan. I shit you not, he was the most boring character ever designed. High frequency katana, character ability that let him reflect bullets at the cost of health. Useful in battle, but seriously, this man had zero personality. He was like an angsty brick. Finally, there was Xeon. She was the resident psionic. Adorable character, about 17 years old and native as hell. She was under the impression she was an X-Man, holding her forehead whenever she did anything psychic. We went through tons of missions, at least a dozen unrelated arcs, in which we were simply trying to make as much money as possible. That was character development. We unlocked Faye's tragic backstory. Xeon temporarily fell in love with Skurrit, which confused everyone, including Skurrit. Archer was once confronted with the choice of either abandoning the party, or run off with the payload, or go back to risk his life to save them. He came back. Nothing interesting ever happened with Ronan. Ever. And Skurrit almost betrayed us at least once per arc, but we forgave him. Ultimately, we grew closer, and I felt accepted. Along the way, something unexpected happened. Hawk introduced a new character, Seraph. She was a part of an independent intergalactic police squadron, or something like that. I never actually figured out what her official position was. But basically, she was a space admiral lady who would be commanding the giant Alliance ships whenever they came to foil our plans. Every time she popped up, which was often, we'd bark at each other over the comms. At first, I thought she was Hawk's last resort, as a Mary Sue DMPC, to finally end Captain Drake's life and get the story back on track. But she grew on me. And by grew on me, I mean really grew on me. She was the complete opposite of Drake. Polite, direct, formal, and slightly prudish. Pick related. Hawk used his character as the basis for her appearance. A lot of players used images to define their characters, but none of us expected Hawk to go into the anime route. As lonely online roleplayers are inclined to do, I began to adopt a more flirty approach with Hawk's lady nemesis. Hawk seemed to pick up on this, and the two of us began to mutually freak out. He/she PM'd me one night, partly through one of the later arcs, and confided that she was worried we were becoming that guys. Shoehorning romance into a setting that perhaps did warrant it, at the risk of derailing the game that we take too far. I felt exactly the same, but it would be redundant for us to both be terrified at the same time. So I took the opposite approach.
Better get it out of our system then, huh?
Now, I immediately regretted saying that. Hawk stopped replying, probably assuming I was suggesting we ERP. I was not suggesting we ERP, goddammit. Anyway, we fell out direct contact for a while, communicating only through Drake and Seraph. The arc that came next was probably the one that will stick with me the longest. This time, we didn't get a new thread. There was no elaborate setup for the arc. Instead, an old thread, which had reached its conclusion, was simply revived by an unexpected post from Skurrit. He described himself making his way through the ship, familiar enough with his crewmates to know exactly what each character would be doing at his end, until he finally made his way to that familiar captain's cabin.
Hey, boss. Heard some juicy gossip on a supply run. And I know how much you like juicy gossip.
That I do, Skirt. Don't keep me in suspense.
Skurrit went on to describe what could be by far the most lucrative job Drake and co had ever done. Now, after working together for so long, each of our individual characters had all the goodies they could ever want. Faye had her upgraded robo arms, Archer had a top tier sniper rifle, and Drake was sporting a high frequency rapier for when they were feeling styling on niggas. The only thing we never managed to upgrade was the ship itself. The forum had gotten more popular over time. While sci-fi was on our turf, the fantasy subforum had been growing at an insane rate. Of course, Hawk had his hands full with our hijinks, so he had to defer control over the other subforums to the new moderators. Now, we could abandon sci-fi. We could abandon these characters, the ship, all this history. But why the fuck would we do that? I tell you all this because that's why we ran through my mind when Screw mentioned this 10 million credit payday. We upgrade the ship. That gives us extra space we need for more crew members. It gives us an excuse we need to make more sci-fi section more welcoming, bringing over some of those fantasy fags, make sci-fi the main attraction again. I don't know why this was so important to me, but I had this mental image in my head. A mental image of Hawk putting in all this work, only to be overshadowed by the neighbouring boards, but ultimately rendered obsolete. Things had become routine, but now I was getting hyped all over again. I had a goal. The odds were against me. Let's fucking do this. The mission was simple. Faye, Ronan, Archer, Skirt and Xeon launched a full-scale assault on one of the most secure off-world facilities in existence. Inside are the blueprints for an experimental new FTL engine of an unprecedented caliber. Something that could extend humanity's reaches to the furthest corners of space. Something that the richest people of the galaxy would be more than happy to spend their fortunes on. All I had to do was sneak in while the security personnel were distracted, grab the loot, and get the hell out of there. The mission was a clusterfuck, to say the least. Ronan was killed outright, barely 6 turns into the assault. Faye took a beating, but Xeon pulled off a ridiculous high will roll to make her invisible to the enemies, just long enough for her to limp back into cover. The perils of being a melee fighter at the endgame. My sneak rolls were solid for a while, but all it took was one failure to set the whole place on alert. At the risk of losing all credibility as a storyteller, it was fucking intense. There wasn't just the illusion of difficulty, we were seriously in danger of getting wiped every turn. Survival seemed implausible for me as soon as I failed on a stealth roll, but I had incredible luck. Enemies missed almost every attack roll, and my crazy high aim modifiers meant I could land hits even with the penalties from shooting while on the move. Eventually, I slip into the deepest levels of the complex. Just as I'm drawing closer to the vault, I get a call from the team. It's Archer.
Drake, tell me you've got the damn engine.
Well, I'm staring at the vault doors, so I guess that's a no, but with an uplifting undertone?
Thank fuck for that. We're getting butchered up here. Ronan's down, Faye's out cold, and Skurrit's MIA. We won't be able to cover your escape. We pop up for another attack and they'll finish off the last of us.
Yeah, dire straits and all that. I'll think of something.
Since the amount of posts I had to take to finish that conversation directly correlates with the amount of ass rape going on elsewhere, I hang up pretty abruptly. Then, I make my way to the vault doors. Bizarrely, Hawk didn't give me a roll to hack the door controls, or a roll to pick the lock, or a roll to force them open. So, throwing caution in the wind, I walk inside. All Hawk describes as a vast empty room, with a lone, white-haired figure sitting at a featureless steel table, upon which rests absolutely nothing. I begin to type up my response, but a quick refresh elicits a new post. From Skurrit. Skurrit should not be able to post right now, but he's not present in the scene. Then I remember something from his sheet. His character ability. This character receives a stunning +4 bonus to sneak rolls. In addition, in cases where this character is rolling sneak against another player, these rolls would be executed in a private channel with a designated GM. Skurrit presses the barrel of his SMG against the back of Drake's head.
Sorry about this, mate, but you really should have seen it coming.
I'm shell-shocked. I mean, yes, Skurrit had tried to betray me literally twice a week for months, but fuck man, come on. Hawk posts again, this time not as a storyteller, but as Seraph. She rises from her seat, smiling a reserved smile, walks around the table, fingers trailing across the surface. All I could think about is how goddamn hot this character is, even though she may be about to kill me.
All those years spent chasing you. No subtlety. No tact. A simple cat and mouse game. It all seems rather silly in retrospect. Now that I know, all I had to do was sit here and wait for your inevitable arrival.
Her post ends. My turn, motherfucker. There are plenty of things I'd like to do, but Hawk is emotionless when it comes to storytelling. If I try anything, she'll give me a ridiculously default roll to pull off before Skurrit ends me. Drake has too much history. There's too much at stake. I can't be foolish. Drake merely grits his teeth, both hands slowly raising into the air.
First of all, Skirret? Fuck you. Second of all, actually, we might need to skip to fifth of all. Maybe sixth. Sixth of all, this is a mighty contradictory ambush, even for you. Have you any idea how many of your men have bled out while you were sitting down here?
Once again he purses Seraph.
I don't dare to count. There's blood on my hands, certainly. Yet, that's always been the case, hasn't it? For every single day I've allowed you to roam this galaxy, every day I failed to apprehend you, I imagine hundreds have died.
Another unexpected Skirret post comes in the time I finish reading.
Well, for the record, love, we're only pirates. No mass murderers or nothing. Don't get me wrong. Definitely on your side. What with the gun to this lad's head and all that. Just saying, you might be exaggerating the magnitude of our wrongdoings, that's all.
I start to type up a response, but Hawk's really pumping out the dialogue. I think he was preparing this for a long time, maybe even rehearsing lines for later.
No, you're not murderers. Not directly, at least. There was a time when I enjoyed our games, Drake. I was foolish enough to believe there were no greater ramifications, but it only took a cursory glance at the planets you've terrorized to see how wrong I was. People have suffered. They have starved to death from your petty thievery. Families have been torn apart. Lives willingly relinquished. I am done playing with you, Drake.
Finally, it seems like I have an opportunity to post. In a situation like this, it's impossible not to be impatient. I type at the speed of fucking sound. I don't care how difficult the rolls are, they won't be getting any easier if I don't act now. First, Scudder's getting his balls kicked. That's non-negotiable. Then, I move to wrench the gun out of his hands while he's stunned. And finally, pivoting on one foot, I'll finish the turn with an SMG aimed at Seraph's direction. I'm doing this for you, Hawk, you fucking triple nigger. The rolls come in. They're hard. As hard as I expected. But I have 12 arcs worth of experience under me. Surely enough, I hit the difficulties. One with ease. The other two with ball-bustingly close rolls, salvaged only by my mods. Unfortunately, Seraph gets a roll to ready her rifle at the same time. And sure enough, she succeeds. It's a Mexican standoff. For a moment, nobody's even beginning to type a response. If we go through with this, there's a good chance both Seraph and Drake could die. I don't want either of them to die, goddammit. Plus, I've always been bound by the rule of cool, so fuck it. I throw my weapon to the ground.
Come on, Sarah. Drop this midlife crisis bullshit. This is fun. It always has been. If you really want it to end like this, then let's play one last time.
I narrate Drake getting into a playful, but mostly comical karate-style fighting post.
Just something to remember me by.
I expect Hawk to go for this. Seraph and Drake have been in a fistfight before. It was by far one of the best moments we've ever had on this forum. This could be a repeat of that. A tiebreaker. Well, not a tiebreaker since we weren't tied. I beat her ass last time. But still, I wait for a response. I get hype. It comes with no time at all. No. Seraph lowers her aim. Attempts to shoot out my kneecaps. Gets the rolls. At this point, Skirret makes a post about getting the fuck out of there, presumably not comfortable with the level of character depth that we are en route of reaching. All I can do is narrate myself falling on one knee. Crippling shots come with one turn stun unless you succeed with an extremely high willpower roll, which of course I do not. At least not without Seraph getting opportunity fire. There's nothing I can do. She wasn't playing by the rules! You might be expecting some incredible last minute turnaround. After all, why would I bother posting the story if it ended like this? Well, prepare yourselves. Bad men don't get happy endings. Unable to resist, and taken off guard by Hawk's mercilessness, Seraph knocks me unconscious with an abrupt smack from the butt of her rifle. Hawk shifts back into storyteller mode, turning his attention to Arch and the others. I am forced to sit through 6 turns of my crewmates struggling to fight back against the overwhelmingly vast force. They were intended as a distraction, not as a real assault team, but they were also told to hold position until the loot was extracted. Faye is the first to go. She finally wakes up, changes right back into the thick of it, and gets mowed down by 3 separate volleys of opportunity fire. Arch is next, He gets in a sniping contest with a few enemy sharpshooters. He wins the first one, loses the second. Sion doesn't even try to run. After Alex's death, her only post is a vivid description of her breaking down and crying on the floor. Hawk wasn't cruel enough to explicitly tell us that the goons had killed her, but she was gone either way. Their story was over. And now, the final chapter of my story would begin. When Drake finally regains consciousness, I find myself in the only place I can rightly expect to be. A prison transport. En route to the most highly secure facility in the galaxy. Hawk describes the depressingly clean interior, possibly the only time I remembered part of the typical setting description. The spotless white walls are almost offensive to your bloodshot eyes, for daring to pretend to be any part of this is clean. She describes a stocky bald guy sitting on the seat opposite mine, looking me up and down.
You're that pirate guy they snatched, ain't you?
At this point, as I'm posting my response, I realize that my writing style itself has completely changed. I am depressed as fuck, and I didn't realize it until I started to type.
Yeah, I guess I am.
Well, I hear you had a good run. I hear lots of things. Gods like to gossip. First time getting carded?
Yeah.
Shame about your crew, huh?
I already knew that they died out of character, but now Drake knew. My descriptions became more half-assed. Drake had no response. The chain of responses began to trail out from there. I think Hawk had done his duty as a storyteller just fine, but even knowing that, nobody could pretend to be happy with it. Even Hawk seemed disheartened by his own actions. There was silence. I left the forum for an hour or so, feeling a little overwhelmed. Had a few drinks, listened to some pathetically depressing music. When I finally checked back, I saw that there were almost a dozen new responses. Hawk playing a seraph. It was a bizarre thing to read, since nobody else was playing anymore. He was essentially talking to himself. It began with her in her private quarters, signing paperwork related to the funerals of all the men who died, making the ambush look convincing. Then, the focus shifted to what she was thinking. At first, it was a self-congratulatory affirmation, but it felt empty. Then transitioned to denial.
Maybe he escaped. People break out of those transports all the time. Maybe Scudder had a change of heart and broke him out.
Then she began to break down. She started to remember all those times when, even though they were on opposing sides, we forged temporary alliances. The times we fought with smiles on our faces, the games we played. It culminated, finally, in a naked, internal confession of love. A love that was never really explored, or justified, but she knew to be requited all the same. I didn't cry reading this, but I came so fucking close. For the longest time, I wanted that delicious happy ending. The ending where Seraph joins the crew, and they fucked the night away. And the void between that ending and the one I got was too wide. And then I remember something. Screw its character ability. Character ability. Character ability! Both me and Hawk, maybe everyone else, too, had forgotten. After all, I'd never really used it. I'd only ever looked at it maybe 3 times at a stretch, counting the time I fucking wrote it. And I disregarded it as worthless, since I was so inexperienced and clueless when I came up with it. But I remember it now. Drake's character ability. Escapist. I honestly can't remember the exact rulings. All I know is they motherfucking applied. In situations like this, Drake got in a unique escapist role, the difficulty of 10 on a 20-sided die. A 50-50 chance. Nigga, fuck dice. I walk downstairs, get a coin, and I flip that shit. Now, I have to ask myself one question. Even if Drake slips his cuffs, would he make it out? I could ask Hawk to create an arc for it. I could do that. I'm not going to do that. What kind of faggot would do that? This day, this moment, this is the end of the story. All I can do now is add one more sentence at the bottom. Hawk is offline. I type a response anyway. A low, rumbling hum can be heard outside Seraph's window. A curious sound which appears to be both familiar and implausible. Hawk comes back the next day. I was up all night waiting for this. He lurks in the thread for a good half hour. I like to think he's just sitting there, mouth agape. He was probably just wondering what the fuck I'm still posting. Eventually, the response comes. Seraph wipes her tear-stained cheeks, stands up, opens her curtains. My turn. Captain Drake, sitting on his ship. I mean on his ship. As in the motherfucking exterior. As it floats in place, hovering just outside her window. Lousy bottom-tier proton blaster aimed squarely at her forehead. Low damage, but enough to kill with a headshot. There is a pause. Hawker finally responds. Seraph smiles warmly.
You win.
There is a pause. I respond.
Nah.
Drake lets his gun drop out of his hand, plummet through the air.
Game's already over.
Stands up on the ship's exterior.
Just something to remember me by.
Climbs back into his ship. Flies off into a literal sunset. I don't wait for a reply. Account settings. Delete account. Confirm. Because no matter how long I stuck around, no matter how many arcs I played through, no matter how long I tried to drag the game on for, there would never be a better time for me to leave than that exact moment. End. Huge thanks to Ashley Tolfo for providing a voice for the video. My female voice is just so cringe, I just didn't want you guys to put up with it. It's really just what the video needed. If you want to, go check out her own podcast, In Your 20s. The link will be in the description down below. Also, huge thanks to my mate Jono for voicing Captain Drake, Creepswork for voicing Archer, and Herothehero for voicing Skurrit. Both the channels will be linked down below if you want to check out their stuff too. And thanks again for watching.